This is a Fatal 4 podcast.
Eyes forward and prepare to shuffle those feet from side to side. It's time for Squared Circle Strafe, the premier video game podcast of the Fatal 4 podcasting network. I am your host, Pro Wrestling Noah, aka Noah Stewart, and it's time to talk about video games. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for downloading this episode on your podcast listening device. Thank you. Hope you're having a good week. I've been having a pretty decent weekend over here. Have you gotten a bit familiar with this dirty soda trend, the sensation that's sweeping the nation? I had a couple of these over the weekend. There's a place by me. There's a chain called Stuffed Belly, and they have a couple of these on tap where they have like a blackberry syrup mixed with starry soda, and then they put some cream in there, and that's pretty all right. I liked that a decent amount. And then I went to Gyukaku, the Japanese barbecue chain, and they had a melon soda that they just put a big glob of whipped cream on top. I think I like that a little less, at least at first, because like the cream didn't really mix with the soda at first, because the glob of whipped cream just kind of congealed into the ice that was at the top of the drink. So I had to like smoosh it down into the soda itself. And once it mixed, it was fine. But I think that I could have had like a less thick cream consistency there. Boy, 2 minutes into the show talking about thick cream. Anyways, tell me if you're in the Discord, which you can have access to by subscribing to Fatal 4 Podcasts on Patreon. Tell me about your dirty soda experiences. Do you like them? Do you think they're a trend? Anyways, that's enough about dirty sodas. Why don't we talk about some video games? I thought I'd change some stuff up this week and talk about the games I've been playing first. Been playing a decent amount of stuff. I'm actually, for the first time, looking in my handy dandy journal to appraise the notes that I've taken about the games I've been playing. The journaling experience has been great, I think. Just having a journal next to me while I am playing video games to write down whatever kind of catches my attention, kind of, impressions I'm getting about the game, or just like little moments that happen that I want to remember to talk about. It's been good. I don't really have, in this day and age, we don't really have a lot of opportunities to write by hand in such a manner. And it's been nice to just honestly, my hand cramps up like pretty easy. And I wonder if that's because I just don't write a ton by hand, because, I'm just typing, which doesn't exert my, grippy muscles as much. So that's been good. That's been fun. But yeah, talking about playing, I finished Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, which I talked about last week, and I finished it, and that game is pretty freaking good. I think I put about 6 hours into it, everything told. I think my Steam time says something like 8 hours, but I think I left it, on pause and walked away to do some chores a handful of times. So maybe that's not as true as it could be. So I feel like I put maybe about 6 hours into it. And that game has some really fun set pieces throughout. It kind of does a really good job of changing up some stuff. There was at one point I was running down a hill and a bulldozer started chasing me and like crashing through a bunch of like, big concrete blocks, and the bulldozer was being driven by a demon. That was fun. I think I exclaimed like, that demon's driving a bulldozer, what the heck? Which was it was crazy. And yeah, the bosses, I've heard a lot of people talk about the boss difficulty in this game, and it is difficult. It's not like, I didn't have like a huge trouble with any of the bosses. I don't think that like any of them like frustrated me to the point where I had to like put the game down and then come back to it later. I tended to take care of them within the same, gaming session that I encountered them. But I think I may have even touched on this the last time I talked about it, but I feel like the way that they want you to interact with the bosses kind of, they dialed the difficulty in such a way that it feels a lot like Cuphead. If you're familiar with, the bosses in Cuphead, where it feels like every time you attempt it, you get just a little bit further, and you can kind of tell like, okay, like I'm understanding this part of the pattern, and now I know what to do to tackle it. But then they introduce a new part, like a new surprising part of the pattern. You're like, okay, now I know what to do about that. So you're just kind of slowly learning how to very cinematically deal with the boss, and it's very cool. I really like that part of the game. There is one level, I think it's like 4-1 that is super long. Like that's like that. Well, that's one thing that I think is not so great, is that the levels, like I feel like in side-scrolling action games, 10 minutes tops for level length, kind of that brevity. So you kind of, like, okay, I got past that. I could maybe, put the game down for a second, or, just kind of recalibrate. But these levels can be like 20 minutes long sometimes, and it can be like a bit fatiguing. Like, oh my gosh, when is this level going to end? And I did, it was funny. There's a mechanic in the game that's like the hyper attack thing, which like a lot of the levels are kind of based around, where enemies will either flash blue or pink. And if you do a physical attack to kill them on blue, you get, like a hyper strike. And the same thing happens if you hit the pink enemies with projectile attacks. Then the next attack that you do is like a one-hit kill to most enemies. And that really helps against the like bigger enemies that take multiple hits. You can just like smash through them, which kind of like helps with if you're doing it right, you have like a really big momentum through the whole level that like just it makes you feel really cool, and like a ninja, where you're just like slashing through everything and killing most things in one hit. But there is one mechanic that I completely forgot about until like one of the second to last levels, where you can if you don't encounter an enemy that is flashing like that, but you do run into an enemy that is so strong that it would be like, a big trial to just like attack them normally without that hyper strike. You can actually hold down the attack button to sacrifice a little bit of your health to get the hyper strike. And I completely forgot about that mechanic until like way late into the game, when I was just like kept running into this one enemy, and I was like, oh, what do I even do about this? And then I was like, oh wait, duh. So I eventually, got that under my belt. So that was fine. And then there's like a fun train sequence at a point. There's you're on motorcycles. There's a helicopter sequence where you're just like hanging from a helicopter while you're attacking a bunch of airborne enemies. A lot of really, really cool set pieces throughout the game. And the interactions between, because you are what's your name? I think Kenji of the Hayabusa clan, and then you're also possessed by the spirit of a Spider Clan ninja, that they're like, adversarial to each other at the beginning of the game, but as the game goes on, they kind of grow to understand each other, and like respect each other as ninja. And I really, really like the ways that they kind of grow closer throughout the game. That was a really fun story element to see evolve over time. to the point that the like climax of the game is like emotionally affecting. I don't want, give away too many spoilers, but I really, really liked it. And by the end of it, I would say it's a very strong recommend. It definitely has a chance of being on my top 10 at the end of the year. So Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, definitely check that out if you have the means to. It's on Steam. I believe it's on Switch too, probably Switch. So maybe even, PS5 and Xbox, what have you. So yeah, definitely check out Ninja Gaiden Ragebound when you get the chance. I'm very excited for Ninja Gaiden 4 when that comes out, especially because that's, I believe, it's, a dual partnership between Team Ninja and Platinum, which, Platinum very good at making character action games. So very, very high expectations for Ninja Gaiden 4, especially after I've been having it is really the year of the ninja, because earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, they put out Ninja Gaiden Black 2, which I had a lot of fun with. And then there's this, and then Ninja Gaiden 4 is coming out later. And I think even like around the time, I think a little before Ninja Gaiden 4 comes out in September, their Sega is putting out their Shinobi game, something Vengeance, Art of Vengeance, I believe, Shinobi Art of Vengeance. And I love the Shinobi games too. I love a ninja game, but it is really, there's a lot of, if you like ninjas in your video games, 2025 is the year for you. And I think I've even heard some people say like, oh, like I'm not playing Ninja Gaiden Ragebound right now because I'm waiting for Shinobi, which I think is a little silly because they're both ninja games. But from what I've seen from trailers and stuff, they look fairly different as far as how how the combat is, dealt in the game. So I would say try them both. I'm very excited to try the new Shinobi game, but also Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, definitely check it out. Why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll tell you about some of the other games I've been playing. All right, we're back, folks, and I am going to tell you next about the indie game I played. I finished it. I started and finished it over the weekend, and that is the game Wheel World. I played it on Steam, and it is a open world bicycling game where it's like kind of, Breath of the Wild-esque, where it's a big open world that your character just kind of like wakes up in. There's not really a lot of explanation of what is the deal with your character, but you wake up in this world, you walk into a big shrine that's shaped like a bell, and you pick up an old rusty bicycle, and it turns out that bicycle is inhabited by a spirit named Scully, who's just like a glowing skull that is apparently in charge of like shepherding souls from this mortal plane through the sewer of spirits to the moon, if that makes sense. but his bicycle that he inhabits has gone into disrepair, and all of the big boss cyclists of this world have stolen all of his legendary parts. So you have to go and beat all of these, cyclists in races to get all the legendary parts back so that you can shepherd the souls to the moon. Got it? Makes sense? Good. Video games. But yeah, so very, silly story. But at its core, it's, you ride around on a bicycle, and the bicycling feels good. Like the vibration feedback you get from like turning corners, and you can really feel like the Foley as well, the audio of your wheels just like carving into the gravel of whatever trail you're on or whatever, like feels really good. That, feels very authentic to, outdoor bicycling. And it has as far as the open world goes, it has a very traditional, if not stripped back, kind of take on the modern type of open world games, where it has uh like big temples shaped like bells, which are essentially, towers you would encounter in like an open world Ubisoft game, or like the towers that you do in Breath of the Wild. I feel like it takes most of its inspiration from like, visuals and kind of, level design from Breath of the Wild, uh where, you find these shrines, you ding your little bell on your bicycle, and it, pops up with a bunch of objectives, indicators on the map that you can then go to complete, missions and objectives and stuff. And each bell shrine that you encounter, you get a like little extra pip to your speed boost meter. The problem with it is that I feel like there's not a lot to explore in these open worlds. Like almost every uh you know activity indicator on the map is just you roll up to a group of guys, bicyclists, and you challenge them to a race. And almost every race, the objectives for each race is you have to come in first. There's like letters for you to collect, KAT, because your character's name is Cat. So you have to collect Cat as you're going through the race. And then there's like a time you can beat, kind of, time trial type of thing, just like beat the record. And for each of those, you get reputation points, that because some of the like boss characters, you can't take them on until you have enough reputation points. And then there's also a coupon system, because there's also, there's a bit of capitalism happening in this wheel world, where there's a like bicycle, like big company that sells parts, and in order to buy the parts, you have to get these coupon credits. So you have reputation and you have credits. But my problem is that there's just not a lot happening in the open world. Like there's not a lot of like nooks and crannies that I feel like I need to go around and explore. There are like some hidden parts throughout the world, but they're not really that hidden. They're just kind of like, out in the open. You can see most places. There is the occasional, they call them lone wolf rider bicyclists that you can run into, that you can like ding your bell on them, and then it starts kind of like an impromptu race, just like in the open world. And that's fine. I honestly found it to be a little like detrimental to my, like, I would be on the way to a race, like a race to challenge, and I'd run into one of those guys, and it would take me way off course on the open world race, because it just kind of plops you back out wherever the race ends. And it's like, okay, well, now I have to go all the way back to the other side of the map to go where I was actually going. So that was kind of a bummer. And yeah, like most of what you do in the game is race. Like there's not any other fun challenges to do on your bicycle. It's just, just race after race after race. And there's like a second area. There's like one big major map, and then there's like another map that you go to. And I feel like the way that they ramped up challenge in that second area is that they just put a bunch of garbage on the track, and like whatever like little piece, like you'll run into like a tin can, and it'll just make your bike wobble like crazy, and you'll go out of control. And it resulted in me just like restarting a bunch of races, because it just like threw me way off course. And I was like, okay, well, this race is I have to throw this one out and try again. And it made me more frustrated than anything else. I really didn't feel like, oh, that was, oh, that just happened because I wasn't good enough. Like, no, that just kind of happened because it was random, just, trash in the middle of the thing, and I just couldn't navigate it properly. And by like the story is okay, but I feel like in the second half I mostly just treated this game like a podcast game, and I skipped over a lot of the narrative text. Just wasn't really that interesting to me. And yeah, it's a bummer because I had high hopes for this game. I played the demo of it, thought it was really cool. I thought the, kind of like upgrade system for your bike was going to be a little bit more in depth. I thought the open world was going to be more in depth than it actually ended up being. And ultimately, I just kind of left the game feeling kind of disappointed, which is a shame. So I don't know if it's your aesthetic, it's got a really pretty kind of cel shaded look to it. It's an indie game. If you want to support the indies, it took me about like a little over 6 hours, I think, to finish. So it's also like not even that long. So yeah, give it a try if it's your thing, but it's definitely a walk, don't run for me. I enjoyed my time with it. But it's not something that I'm super, super jazzed about. Then the last game that I really spent, some time with this weekend was I finally picked up Keep Driving, which is a game that I think I talked about sometime last year. I played the demo of it during the Steam Next Fest. And I believe this game came out sometime in February this year. It had its actually its full release. And it is a kind of turn-based strategy roguelike game where you play as a teen or a young adult. I think it's a young adult. You are going on your first road trip across the country, and it's funny because you start the game and you kind of have a character creation screen where you get to enter your name, you get to enter your occupation, which is either unemployed, mechanic, or student, and that kind of determines the items that you get in your trunk, kind of your starting kit. And then also one of the options is your relationship with your parents that you can have on a sliding scale from 0 to 5, which actually comes into play during the game in an interesting way. And then you also get to pick what kind of car you are driving. They have a sedan or a truck or I think a minivan. So there's a bunch of different variations you can have going into these runs, but ultimately the way that the game is kind of set up is you have a big map of the country that you're going across, and you are trying to get from point A to point B, and there's a bunch of stops kind of in little towns, rural towns in between. And as you're traveling from town to town, it's kind of like a side scrolling your car going across the screen, and then you'll run into a hazard. And when you run into a hazard, it starts a turn-based turn-based combat with whatever that hazard is. But because it's just a pretty mundane road trip game, the hazards are stuff like, oh, there's something on the side of the road, or oh no, you've encountered roadkill, or there's a 18-wheeler that you have to kind of navigate around. And the way that you kind of combat these instances of things you run into on a road trip is it will pop up a bunch of symbols that are attempting to do damage to one of your many resources in this game. Those resources being energy, gas, durability, and money. And you have a bunch of abilities you can kind of fire off that match up symbols with whatever the symbols are that are trying to attack your different resources. And once you clear all those symbols, then the encounter is defeated. You can also press your gas pedal to kind of like, as you're, kind of like escaping the encounter kind of situation. But you take damage from whatever, symbols are left in the encounter by doing that. And yeah, it's a very challenging game. I feel like a lot of the encounters I kind of leave taking a decent amount of damage in, any way in particular. And there's, various ways you can replenish all those resources with energy. You just have to like eat food, money. You can, you get a bunch of items. Like there's a ton of stuff. Like you have a trunk that you can fill stuff up with, in kind of a Resident Evil 4 style, rotating items in a puzzle like fashion to fit in your trunk. And there's stuff like, energy bars, bananas, fruits, all, various kinds of fruits, beef jerky you can buy from gas stations that will replenish your energy. You can also sell items that you acquire back to stores to get money. You'll have to go to car repair shops to repair your durability. And then there's gas stations you have to go to refill your gas. You can also get gas canisters to fill up with gas and put in your trunk, just in case you're running out of gas, but you're not close enough to a gas station and you're about to run out of gas. So you can refill it with your extra gas canisters. And yeah, it's a lot of like juggling these different resources, because you'll also get afflicted with status ailments. Like you'll get tired, which reduces your, the maximum amount of energy that you can have at one time. Or you'll get hungry, which makes it so that every time you use an ability that requires energy, it costs like one extra energy on top of whatever, it costs to pop off that ability. And there's so much flavor in everything, like in every single mechanic in this game, because there's also hitchhikers that you can encounter. Like in my first run of the game, I encountered a kind of like punk rocker dude who was on his way to a venue for a show, which is like kind of a side quest that you can do. You can kind of like go off your, guided path to wherever he needs to go to get to the show. He also, like, whatever starting vehicle you start with, like if you have the sedan, it has like, 4 seats that you can fill up in the car. But if you have a truck, it's only like a 2-seater. So you can only put like 2 other people in there with you. So as you're picking up these hitchhikers, and the hitchhikers will give you extra abilities that will help you in encounters. There's and also this punk rocker that I picked up had a dog. So I also had the dog with me in the car, and I could like feed him stuff, and it's nice. And also like speaking of the flavor of the game, it's all soundtracked by an actual band, and it's kind of this, shoegazy, like pop punk kind of stuff, just like really, really good Americana road trip kind of vibes, just like all throughout this game. It's very cool. And then, oh yeah, the other, speaking of flavor and just like in mechanics, I mentioned earlier that the character creation, you determine what your relationship with your parents is. And that's because if at any time any one of your resources completely depletes and it, jeopardizes your run, like you're about to, end the run in a bad way, there's a couple different things you can do. You can, if you have the right parts, you can do an emergency, like attempt to fix your car. Or you can, if it's nighttime, you can try and rest and see if that'll, like there's like a 50-50 chance you'll get back into the run with enough energy that way. And if like everything else is not viable, then you have a cell phone that you can use to call your parents. And depending on your relationship with your parents, it gives you more or less of a chance that they will help replenish whatever resource is deterring you from finishing the run. So on my first run, I actually had the durability on my car completely ran out. So I called my parents and popped up the little cell phone and said calling dad. And it's like a really, suspenseful, like, oh, is he gonna pull through? And then it popped up like, hey, like all the durability's back. He your parents gave you a little extra cash. I think on that run, I was like in the middle. Like I had, it was about like a 3 on the scale from 1 to 5. Just like really, really fun ways that it like, has ways of telling these emergent stories throughout all these runs. Really, just really, really heavy vibes game. I haven't put a ton of time into it. I've only really played one run, but it's something that I really hope that I, return to. I believe it is Steam Deck verified, so I really feel like this is something I should maybe, just kind of like curl up with before bed and put a couple runs into. Really, really neat game. So keep driving. Definitely check that out if you have, the means to, on Steam. I think it's on Switch. I'm not sure, but yeah, definitely. This will be one that I will hopefully, keep going back to throughout the rest of the year. But that's the games I've been playing. Why don't we take another quick break, and when we come back, I will hit you with some of the news that's been happening. All right, we're back, folks, and I am going to hit you with some of the news that's been happening this week in video games. Starting off with most of this game news coming to you from videogameschronicle.com. This first story headline says weapons director Resident Evil movie the weapons director's Resident Evil movie won't have existing characters because fans can play the games for their stories. Earlier this year, it was confirmed that Zach Cregger, the writer-director behind the critically acclaimed horror movie Barbarian and the recently released Weapons, will be writing and directing a new Resident Evil movie, which will reboot the film series. With Barbarian and Weapons achieving Rotten Tomato scores of 92% and 95% respectively. Fans are excited about the prospect of Cregger directing a Resident Evil movie and the hope that it could result in similar critical praise. In an interview with Inverse, Cregger has now explained that his film won't retell the stories from the games, but will instead feature new characters and tell a new story in the same universe. Cregger explained that because he's a big fan of the Resident Evil games, he doesn't feel there's any need to retell these stories because in his eyes, they've already been told well enough. In a quote, he says, "Let me say this. This is not breaking the rules of the games," Cregger said, insisting that the new movie will still respect Resident Evil lore. "I'm the biggest worshiper of the games, so I'm telling a story that is a love letter to the games and follows the rules of the games. It is obedient to the lore of the games. It's just a different story. I'm not going to tell Leon's story because Leon's story is told in the games. Fans already have that." Cregger says that if any players were hoping to see characters like Leon, Jill, Chris, or Claire appearing in this movie, they can play the game to see their stories. Constantine Films, which has held the screen rights for Resident Evil since the 1990s, will reportedly produce the reboot along with the PlayStation Productions. And Sony has set a release date for the film for September 18th, 2026. So I'm pretty optimistic about this. I'm there. If you are in the Didn't Get All of It, Fatal 4 podcast Discord, and you are a follower of the Spooky Talk channel in that Discord, you'll see that we've all been talking a lot about weapons. A lot of us are really, really high on weapons fever. I myself saw it and liked it a lot. I'm also a big fan of Zach Cregger's previous movie, Barbarian. So big Zach Cregger fan. And when it was announced that he was going to do the Resident Evil movie, I feel like I saw a lot of people going like, ugh, because, Resident Evil movies in the past have not been that great. Like the Mila Jovovich movies are fun, but not, not high cinema, not like, critically acclaimed films. And then there was also the first attempt to kind of reboot the series in, I think it was 2021. It was like a Netflix release movie, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, that attempted to tell the story of the first two games, and it was not. I heard very bad things about that movie. So I can see, new Resident Evil movie and think, ugh, I don't know about that. But I trust Zach Cregger to make something novel and cool. And also, I respect this decision to do something in the world of Resident Evil, but not necessarily, retelling something from the games. I think that's a smart way to approach this. I would someday like to see a retelling, like a film adaptation of maybe Resident Evil 4, just because that game is so, action focused and cinematic. I feel like there's something really cool you could do in a, film, like visual language style retelling of that game. But that's also kind of like the hard thing about, adapting games, right? Is that a lot of them, the runtime is way longer than movies, so it's kind of hard to smoosh all of that story down into the runtime of a film. And also, one of the cool things about video games is that it kind of takes, a lot of stuff from film, but then also has everything that makes it cool about video games. And then you're just kind of like taking the interactive the interactive part away from it, and you're just getting like the film part. So I don't know. I'm excited to see a new Zach Cregger movie. I think is ultimately where I end up landing on it. And it seems like he has a lot of reverence for the franchise. I bet he could do maybe do something cool like what is it? Resident Evil. What was the PS2 game? Resident Evil Outbreak. Which was like the online game where you just played like as a bunch of rando people, and you'd have, team up with people online to navigate a Resident Evil adventure together. And I bet you could do something like that for a movie, just like have some normal civilian characters trying to survive in a Resident Evil zombie infestation situation. That could be cool. And then, you have like a bunch of Umbrella stuff referenced throughout. Maybe you might see like a flash of Nemesis or Mr. X somewhere. There's stuff you can do. I'm excited to see what, Zach Cregger is going to bring to it. Next story is this is kind of a silly one. Headline says, "Liberate Cow. Animal rights group PETA urges Nintendo to remove cow's nose ring in Mario Kart World. Leave the rings to Sonic," says the organization says. So basically PETA put up on their Blue Sky and I think X accounts. Actually, I think it was just X. I think I may have seen just like a screen cap of this on Blue Sky. But PETA put up an image of the cow from Mario Kart World, which, is a playable character, with a caption saying, "Hey, Nintendo, let cow race free. Remove her nose ring." And then the, tweet text say, "Liberate cow." And that's it. Very, very silly. I feel like the general consensus as far as like opinions on PETA is that they are very silly. And I've seen a lot of, reactions to this being like, hey, let the cow wear whatever it wants. Like, I think their stance on it is that the nose ring for cows is used in, like ways that kind of like hurt the cow in the, meat processing process of, like hurting them. And, that may be true, but people wear nose rings and it's a fashion statement. Why can't the cow? The cow's having a good time. It's driving the cart around. It's just trying to win the race. Let the cow race and have fun. Whatever. I don't know. That was just a silly thing that happened. I don't know why, it's a good, I guess it's a way that PETA can get people talking about PETA. Bad press is good press, or whatever. Any press is good press. Whatever the saying is. Speaking of Nintendo adjacent IPs, there was another very silly thing that happened, which was Pokemon's McDonald promo. I'm sorry. Pokemon's McDonald's promo ends early in Japan due to extreme demand and wasted food. The latest Pokemon McDonald's promotion kicked off in Japan on Saturday. That was this past Saturday, not this weekend Saturday, but the previous one. Was planned to last until Monday, August 11th. However, due to higher than expected sales, the promotion was ended after just one day. The popularity of the promotion has stemmed from a Pikachu card that can be found in the Happy Meals, which features a new printing of the character in a special McDonald's stamp. The art shown here is Pikachu reaching for a cheeseburger, which is very cute. The rarity of this card has caused its price to rise in the secondary market, and as a result, thousands of people made their way to McDonald's stores around Japan. Reports then emerged that were people buying thousands of dollars worth of food, removing the Pokemon cards, and then leaving the uneaten food in the street to rot. This, combined with reports of boxes of the cards being illegally sold by McDonald's employees, caused the promotion to be quickly shut down. McDonald's promotions typically feature reprinted versions of commonly available cards in an effort to stop this exact type of demand from taking hold. For this release, however, that trend wasn't followed. Very silly. Very silly thing to happen. I mean, a shame about all of the food that got wasted in this, the images that they share for this article. It does show just like a ton of bags of food just like sitting in the streets of Japan, just abandoned, which is crazy. The card is very cute, but man, it also just sucks. Like this whole, everything about the ways that people approach the trading card game hobby in general these days, like it's just a bummer to observe. Like I was really into Yu-Gi-Oh growing up. I was very into Magic the Gathering in high school and college, and I feel like most of the stress that I had when it came to terms with that is, oh man, like another set's coming out. I might have to drop another, $200 or whatever to get a box to get, a decent set of this, new expansion. Oh man, what a headache. And now it seems like there's an extra barrier of, am I even going to be able to get my hands on some of these cards? Because like these stores, like, Target and Walmart especially, have just like put up barriers where like the cards are barely even available on shelves. Like you have to like show up at specific times because there's going to be a line out the door of people, especially scalpers, trying to scoop up, like tons and tons of the product that they can then flip on the secondary market. It sucks. It sucks really bad, especially if you are just like I was when I was growing up and just want the cards so I can play them. And like you're like, so many people are denying the opportunity to those types of people that want to engage with it that way. So people need to chill out. Just chill out with the cards. And also the companies themselves make more cards, make the game more available to the people that want to, get them and enjoy them. And, maybe help pop this speculator bubble that's seems to just keep getting bigger and inflating every day. Ugh. Anyways, shame about all that food. I could go for a Big Mac, or no, not a Big Mac. I like a Quarter Pounder. I am a defender of the McCrispy strips that they brought back. I've seen a handful of people saying like, those are trash. Those weren't bringing back. No, they have a good consistency. I like the breading on it. I like the chili sauce that it comes with. McCrispy strips are good. Dang it. A couple more stories here. Chibi Robo is the next GameCube title coming to the Switch 2's Nintendo Classics library. Chibi Robo being the GameCube game where you play as a little guy, a little robot with a little, plug that you can plug into walls to charge him up, make him go. The goal being that you are, it's kind of little guy, big world kind of situation where you are in a house, but you're, little tiny robot, like the size, maybe as tall as a mug, like a coffee mug. And your goal is to just kind of clean up the house. But, you're battery powered, AC powered, and you have to, charge at outlets. So if you're running around, you run out of power, you have to, start back at the last checkpoint. I've never played it before, but it's always a game I've been interested in. It seems very, very charming. So it is going to hit the Nintendo Classics, Nintendo Switch Online service on August 21st. So pretty soon here. And I think I'll give that a spin once it hits that service. I believe my Nintendo Online sub is active at the moment. So yeah, definitely going to check that out. And then this story actually comes to us from gamesindustry.biz, and is something that I am personally very excited about. Blackbird Interactive acquires full ownership of Hard Space Shipbreaker IP. The studio has confirmed multiple hard space projects are in development. Blackbird Interactive has acquired the full IP rights to Hard Space Shipbreaker from Focus Entertainment. Released in 2022, sci-fi sim Hard Space Shipbreaker was developed by Blackbird Interactive and published by Focus Entertainment, who have also acquired partial ownership of the IP. Blackbird Interactive has now bought the full rights from the publisher. The studio has revealed it has multiple Hard Space projects in active development, which will feature the studio's trademark mix of evocative world building, immersive physics-driven gameplay, and boundary-pushing design. I am very excited about this. Hard Space Shipbreaker was like one of my very, very favorite games that came out in 2022. I think, what was it? I think it was Neon White came out that same year. And that was my number one game, but Hard Space Shipbreaker was a very, very close second. Hard Space Shipbreaker, if you don't know what it is a like ship dismantling labor simulator where you play in like you play as a dude in a scrapyard that is in space. So you're like moving a character around in first person in 0G. So you have to, like move left, right, up, down, but then also, like your character is rotating in 3-dimensional space. So you have to like navigate that as well. The 6 degrees of freedom, as it's sometimes called. And you play in a scrapyard for big, like space rigging ships. Like basically like think like the Nostromo from Alien. But it's like a scrapyard for that. So the ships come in, you have to dismantle them, take out the warp drive very carefully. There's like a whole process you have to do to dismantle the very sensitive parts of the ship, or else they'll explode and they'll like damage, the very expensive parts of the ship that if you salvage, you get a lot of bonus points for. It's a game that it's just like, kind of like a sci-fi version of something like a truck driver simulator or farming simulator, where it's just something that you are simulating just being good at a job. But there's something really, really satisfying about just like the process of scrapping the ships in that game. And that was like another thing that, I kind of treated as a podcast game, but it was just a really satisfying thing to do. while just chilling with a podcast. It was one of my absolute favorite games that year. And I'm so glad, that the developer got their the full IP rights to it, and that we're potentially getting more of that game, because it's been 3 years since the last one, and I cannot wait for hopefully a new game in the franchise coming out next year. So yeah, that's pretty much all the news I have for you this week. Be excited for next week, because Gamescom opening night live is happening this Tuesday. Gamescom is, I believe, starting up on Tuesday, and there will be a lot of game news coming out of that. Jeff Keighley is going to be on a stage introducing trailers. It's going to be a whole big thing. So it's kind of like, Summer Games Fest Part 2 in a way. So I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about news-wise next week. But thank you so much for tuning in this week for Squared Circle Strafe. Leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts if you like the show. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Oozing Neon. If you want to catch more of me talking about some real nerdy stuff, you can follow the Didn't Get All of It podcast to hear me and the rest of the Fatal 4 hosts talk about the latest and greatest in professional wrestling. You can also sign up for our Patreon to get exclusive access to our Discord, as well as bonus podcast content and the satisfaction of supporting independent podcasting media. Head to patreon.com/Fatal4Pod. That's Fatal, F-O-U-R pod. Thank you again for listening, and as always, enjoy your gaming.
You've been listening to a Fatal 4 podcast. Subscribe today wherever you get your podcasts, and visit fatal4pod.com for more episodes, merchandise, and info on the Patreon.